So without further ado, let's get down to business and let me introduce you to my esteemed guests. First of all, I would like to call to the stage Dr. Dong-Suk Kim. He is, of course, the President and CEO of Korea National Oil Corporation. Please welcome him. The second seat, please. Next, we have Montri Ramachandkul. He is, of course, the CEO of PTTEP. A very warm welcome, Montri. Next, we have Adif Zulkifli. He is the Executive Vice President and CEO of Upstream for PETRONAS. Thank you. And last but by no means least, we have Dr. Oki Muraza. He is from Pertamina. Please give him a warm welcome also. He's just being mic'd up. Technical problems, you see. You never get that in the energy business. Please welcome Dr. Oki. Gentlemen, it's an honor to be with you here today. You can see that we have a jam-packed house, so plenty of questions and topics to get through, but let's start with a broad scene-setting question for you all. Dr. Kim, let me come to you first. From the perspective of your business and, of course, the region, what are the key enablers that you would say for bringing accessible, affordable, reliable, sustainable, and safe energy to Asia?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, before talking about the key enablers, do we have, if I were asked to, do we have like a affordable, accessible, secure, and reliable, sustainable energy? Is this exist? I would say maybe, maybe not. Will it be? Maybe. To me, the energy transition is that it's not like a transform to renewables. To me, energy transition is an optimization, optimal mix of different sources of energy. For example, oil, gas, and solar. It will depend on each country. What will be the maximum or optimal energy mix? It depends on cooperation, it depends on countries. Having said that we are working with optimal mix of energies. So under that assumption, what will be the key enablers? What I said, I will say three terms. The first one is called technology, innovative technology. If you look at shale gas, for example, I mean, hydrofrac gives the gas industry made a difference, and it made available plenty of gases. For example, solar energy. If you look at the solar energy, that the cost of solar right now will be about 10 times cheaper than a decade ago, which means technology makes the energy mix available. By the same token, in the renewable energy area, I believe technology is a key enabler for us to get where we are to where we want to be. The second item is investment. I mean, if you look at it, we are all E&P companies and so on. The investment of E&P has been declined so many years, and we are all suffered. On top of it, so-called the ESG, financial institutions, restrained from further investment. The question to us as oil and gas company, and then coming into the renewables or coming to carbon zero, net zero vision, what will be the wise way to invest? So the another is kind of investment. Second one, to me, is international collaboration. Like in Asia, the countries like Korea or Japan, or for that matter, maybe China, we are very much on the end user of it. Whereas like Malaysia, Vietnam, or PTT, Indonesia for that matter, are the more on the producer side. So we have to collaborate to get the maximize its synergy. For example, for hydrogen, we are of coal to hydrogen combustion. Currently, Korea is working very hard to look at it. And we are on the hydrogen and the user side. We are developing, turbines and so on and so forth. Whereas we are lacking in the blue ammonia or ammonia on hydrogen side. We have to work together with other countries and companies. So to answer the question is technology, investment, and international collaboration.
Thank you so much. We will, of course, come back to collaboration and partnerships, so important to our conversation. Montri, let me come to you next. In terms of what we've heard from Dr. Kim, an optimal mix of the energy is so vital as we go through this transition. Give me a progress report, if you will, from where you sit in your company and the region as to where we currently stand.
Right. Thank you. Let me start by looking at the consumption, the energy demand. As I think everyone knows, it's the fact that 60% of the energy demand is in Asia. Asia has 60% of the population of the world. So we are shorting out the supply. But where we are, when we talk about the balancing between this supply and sustainability, the cleaner world and so on, it's become a big issue. And a lot of things changed, the challenge over the past 10 years. If you recall, last decade we were talking about disruption. No one wants to have the fossil fuel, but today, it's going backward. So where we are today as a company leading into a cleaner world for protecting the world, as you use your word, Rebecca, what are we doing? We have to produce cleaner energy. The cleaner energy, as we've seen before, is not only the oil and gas, but it's not an option of all, but it's option of and, as what Dr. Southern said yesterday. So where are we now in PTTEP? We are now producing to secure the energy supply to a country. We take it from a neighboring country. We're working in Malaysia with ADIPEC, and we are trying to secure the energy as what we see the demand. But then it's not only that. People saying, all this energy has to be cleaner. So cleaner how? How are we doing it? What are we doing it? Technology coming into the picture. If I can imagine, that we all producing gas with no CO2, the world would be a much better place to live. But how are we going to go to low CO2 or even zero CO2 or greenhouse gas as a whole? So where we are now, we need to look at the trilemma and be realistic. The trilemma that now we see is not balanced, and it's going to take years to make it balanced. Where are we looking at? We're looking at security, we're looking at affordable energy, and we're looking at sustainability. So if you put it on one side of the equation, then the whole world will go into this, I would say, the predicaments, the mess that we see. At the moment, we see the short of supply, and what I see overall, people have putting less attention into what we've been talking about net zero. To be honest, I have seen net zero declare everywhere in the world, but only a few things has been done to it. So, why we secure the energy, why we're producing, why we try to make it affordable, we need to think about what we put in places for the net zero plan.
Increasingly more countries, if I may just quickly follow up, are getting on board and aligning and coming together, but not everybody is fully committed. So what is preventing people, be it from net zero or carbon neutrality, being fully committed to that? What will it take to get them to sign up?
Two things, and I will come back to collaboration you talk about. Two things. Net zero require massive capital, massive. And the capital that you put in, it wouldn't work if you don't have it in a commercial way. And how you can make it a commercial way, I have to turn to ADIPEC because we try to work together. Recreation. The recreation has to come up and say, okay, let's try to make these things commercial because no one will do it for charity. And if you don't do it for charity, the whole world's go disperse. So we have to think about it. massive capital investment, think about CCS, think about carbon capture utilization, is all require massive capital upfront. And the capital has to turn out to be a commercial way. One of the things to do it is the regulation have to support it. In many countries in the world, you see carbon tax, you see carbon credit, you see people talking about it. It's become commercial in Europe. It become commercial in UK and US and Australia and so on. Why not Asia? That's the only question I have. And I like to hear more on the collaboration, because these were after the 100 years of using fossil fuel, competition is the old term. We cannot live with this concept of being competitive. We need to have more partnerships, collaboration, sharing knowledge. Think about regulation that works somewhere can work in our region as well.
Absolutely, and this is the place to do it, so let's get deals done. Let me come to you next, Adif. Thank you again for being here today. The IEA, of course, projects that energy security in Southeast Asia will be at huge risk due to accelerated growth of the region. How, therefore, can the region truly provide energy security to its people? Massive challenges need a massive solution, so what's your outlook?
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for being here in this panel with my fellow esteemed speakers. This has been a great honor to be here. When it comes to energy security, always people talk in the context of the energy trilemma.
Yeah.
It's secure, affordable, and sustainable. I think in Asia, whether we like it or not, we tend to skew more towards affordability. And especially for countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, I think that's probably takes precedence over sustainability and security to some degree. For Malaysia, I think we are quite blessed because we do have our own hydrocarbon resources. And with that, I think we do have our own indigenous gas resources. And most of our industries, or rather our power, has been now today run by gas. Although we do import some coal from Indonesia, but by and large, I think we are a gas exporting country. We not only provide gas for the local consumption, but most importantly also we provide LNG, especially for the region. So when it comes to providing energy security from our context, I think to make sure that we continue to be the safe and reliable producer for the nation and also for the region. And I think we pride ourselves for having that record, for being able to provide that energy supply, which is quite reliable and also secure. And being in that part of the world, I think we are also in a location that we are the closest to our market in Far East. And that in itself provides a lot of comfort to our customers. And that's in the context of energy security along this tree. Another way, taking a step further, I think it is important for countries like Malaysia to continue to sustain our production. And you can't do that unless you actually embark on a continuous exploration program to add more resources to your oil and gas reserves. And we need to continually produce, not only move the resources from prospective to contingent and also to what we call this proven, where we can actually monetize. And I think, and as far as Malaysia is concerned, I mean, Monterey is also a part of one of the participants in our EMP industry. I think we have been very progressive, we've been very open, and we are encouraging a lot of players to come in. So we are embarking on a renewed or revitalized EMP landscape today. We are trying to encourage more people to come and take up blocks and also to do more exploration work.
Right.
We are also giving some, improvement in our fiscal terms to encourage development of new resources and new reserves. We are also trying to streamline all our business processes to make it easy for people to come and actually work through our own EMP landscape. And of course, there's also a lot of work and collaboration with the local oil and gas equipment and services industry too. It's so important. They need to deliver very competitive services to the industry so that we are able to deliver affordable energy that is competitive. I think we're trying a lot of things, but my commentary may be a bit more centric towards Malaysia, but in the context that we are responsible to provide the energy security for Malaysia, which is also affordable. And also, we are also providing as an energy exporter to the region in terms of reliable energy supply. But having said that, maybe I can take a bit more, I can talk about it a bit more later. We are also embarking on what we call the sustainability agenda. I think PETRONAS is one of the company which is probably first, I would try to take pride of that. We are the first to declare net zero carbon emission by 2050. And I think the whole organization has rallied behind that call at the moment. And not only that, we have put all our plans together towards 2050, we have a clear roadmap to get there. We have done all of inventorizing of our emission. I think we're quite clear on how much we emit on scope 1, scope 2, and then we are now embarking on scope 3. And we have a very clear carbon reduction program. In my business, upstream, I think we have been spearheading the decarbonization efforts within PETRONAS. So we have committed to zero venting by 2024. We've committed to zero flaring by 2030. We are also committing to the World Bank zero routine flaring. And on the last count, if I can remember, we have already reduced close to 30% of our emission, absolute emission since 2019. And this year alone, I think we have improved another further 25%. So we are making progress, making steps. But I agree with Montri, but step to net zero is going to be very difficult, and that's where the technology comes in.
Right.
You can actually work on in terms of efficiency gain. You can reduce your emission, but at some point you must have a technology. The key technology to me, the game changer is CCUS. We need to make CCS competitive. We need to make it affordable, so that whereby whenever we produce oil and gas, we are able to decarbonize and we can actually remove the CO2 and we can store that underground. And this, to me, is the only solution that provide you negative carbon reduction. And I truly believe in CCS, and I think Montri knows that we are putting Lang Lebah on that path.
Right.
And I think we are committed in future development. Any project we have got not only zero venting, zero flaring, but if it comes high CO2, it has got to come with CCS scheme to go with that. I think enough for that for now. I've seen quite
It's
a bit.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to gain the insight, and yes, we wish you all every continued success with these strategies.
Yeah.
Dr. Oki, let me come to you. Sitting from your seat, working for the largest oil and gas company in Indonesia, talk to me about your strategy, the direction in which you're headed, not least in reducing your carbon footprint.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, and also thank you, the organizer, for inviting Pertamina to these sessions. So, Rebecca, we are very lucky in Indonesia. Basically, 40 years before Paris Agreement, we started our explorations on geothermal. Being in the tropical country with so many volcanoes, we are hosting basically one of the largest potency for geothermal. We have about 23,000 megawatt in Indonesia. And at this moment, Pertamina is the largest in Indonesia. We are basically the second in the world. In terms of capacity, we have total capacity about 1.9 gigawatt. So the first strategy, of course, we try to have the green electricity, because when we talk about the transitions, there are only two base loads. One is the geothermal, the second one is the hydro power. So the geothermal is helping us a lot. And there is a good news from Sustainalytics. Recently, for the integrated oil and gas company, Indonesia is the second on earth. Yeah. So this is very good achievement. And then after the green electricity, we also have a number of initiatives, like many other companies. Methane capture play an important role, in which that we try to have zero flaring. This basically reducing our emissions in terms of methane, because methane is like 30 times than the CO2, right, in terms of the GHG factor. And then in addition to that, energy efficiency. These days, many speakers are talking about energy efficiency. In Indonesia, we are doing, basically we utilize the waste heat coming from our geothermal by having proper technology. Yeah. Dr. Dong mentioned about technology, and indeed technology is very important. So we are developing more technologies in terms of utilizing the waste heat. And in addition to that, of course, we have also a number of initiatives in order to optimize the stream and emissions within Pertamina Group. Yeah, and I would like to comment on Mr. Montri and also Dr. Don and also Datu Atif about the capital required for this energy transition. Indeed, I'm wearing two hats now. In addition to Pertamina role, Indonesia this year is holding the presidency for G20. So please welcome to Bali after 2 weeks, in which that we are hosting the G20. Within G20, we have engagement group, Business 20. So I'm the policy manager for Business 20, Energy, Sustainability and Climate, in which that we propose basically the channeling funding from developed world to emerging economies is very important, because many technologies, as we know now, still not mature yet. What is the consequence of this maturity? Basically the cost. The cost is still high. So basically when we can put more investment on technology, then the cost will go down, and in which that basically everyone in the world will enjoy the same technology. This is the spirit that we have in G20 Indonesia. No one left behind, basically developed worlds and also developing economies. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, talk to me about that in terms of technology. It's not yet fully matured and there's been massive uninvestment to date. So what does the timeline look for catch-up?
Yeah, so basically regarding the timeline, the electrification, for instance, electrification depends on the battery. At this moment, we still need to improve the storage capacity of the battery, be it lithium-based or nickel-based. And then after in addition to electrification, the world is also expecting hydrogen. Yeah, you are seeing many sessions basically within this event, ADIPEC, on hydrogen. Hydrogen, the key for the green hydrogen is basically the electrolyzer. And just like the battery, still we need to put more investment on developing cheap electrolyzer, in which that it will allow us to reduce the cost of the hydrogen. At this moment, the cost of the green hydrogen is still above $6 per kilogram to what we have now from the gray hydrogen. Gray hydrogen is only about $1.5 per kilogram.
Thank you. Dr. Kim, one of the many words that keeps floating to the top, of course, is collaboration, partnerships. Talk to me about how you're positioned going forward, how important partnerships are right now. What is the climate for teaming up and getting together?
This, as you know, first, as many have said, that its key is huge cost. I mean, so even if we collaborate, without the government influence or without government support, it will be initially it will be very difficult to sustain. So the collaboration part is important, and also the government support is necessary in that matter. Yeah.
So it takes the governments to come to the table first,
Yes.
more framework, more policies, more initiatives, then the capital will flow, and then collaboration comes third. Is that if I understand it?
Well, fair to say, but the thing is, if we start the collaboration, then government may realize that that's how it is.
So what is the solution here when we look at the energy transition and the energy trilemma? Which comes first? Is it a chicken and egg situation with the governments or PPPs? What would you say, Montri, to that?
I would say the energy security, because we need to have the energy. People need to survive, and you cannot let people starve winter, summer, whatever. So energy security comes on the top of the agenda. But then again, you cannot leave it alone. You have to work collaboratively. And investment, you have to take the government to be one of your partner to really understand that, to do all this, we need to invest. Give the example of what we work with PETRONAS. PETRONAS understand that how we work together in a green field and brown field and so on. So we work on the concept and just say, let's understand the issue together. We cannot wait until the technology is proven. We cannot take until the money is available. But we need to work on regulation together, and in the same way. But if you ask me again, today it's not balanced. Today we are looking at security. Energy security is the top of the list. because, well, leave the affordability alone, because affordability is something. If you have more energy to secure, it will be affordable.
But given how capital intensive the process is, what more do you want to see government doing?
Ideally, you ask me ideally, I like to have the government sitting here and talk on my behalf.
Wouldn't we all?
You know, the government stand up and say, let's make this thing together. Let me give you an example. Thailand as a whole, today we emit about 300 million tons carbon dioxide a year. Take the whole Thailand, put it as forestation everywhere, no building, no nothing. You will absorb 150 million tons a year. The whole Thailand. So you cannot do that, right? So forestation is not the answer. The answer is the world needs CCS technology.
Yeah.
The world needs to store carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Would you agree with me?
Certainly.
And to do that, we say that we as the producer, we looking at the technology is proven everywhere.
Yeah.
But when we put in our location, in our area, in our region, we need to have someone to stand up and say, let's make it happen. Because if you don't make it happen, then target zero or net zero that everyone declare. We also declared 2050 net zero, scope 1, scope 2. Along the way, we have this carbon neutrality. We reduce the intensity before we go to absolute numbers. And not to joke about it, we talk about net zero. But someone in the other room was talking about net positive. That's what they like to see it better than net zero. But I said, well, before we go to that, put everyone in the same room and talk about the same agenda. Because at the moment, what I see, it's just, I wouldn't say it's too strong word, but it's lip service.
Well, this is getting juicier. Okay, Adif, let me come to you. Lip service, question mark, first question. But if you were to speak directly to power, we obviously understand the sensitivities of talking this way, but what do we want the governments to do more of? Are we talking more incentives, or is it just to come to the table and be more available and adaptable to industry's concerns?
I think a bit of everything from the government. In that sense, I think what we need first and foremost, clear policy from the government. It can be as simple as what would be the desired energy mix for a certain country. From there on, it will be much easier for industry to work on in terms of what would be the best mix of energy. And we need all energy. I mean, whether it's clean energy, whether it's oil or gas, even coal for that matter. And it's important that the government are very clear in terms of its policy. If this indeed the government is also committed to net zero carbon, which I think at some point countries like Malaysia will be, but we also need to have very clear policy in terms of what would be the carbon credit mechanism. Would there be imposition of carbon tax, for example? Would the government provide some incentives in terms of capital allowance or tax break? I think those are very important tools for government in terms of policy to encourage journey towards net zero carbon. It can be both from the angle of providing more clean energy solutions, whether it's renewable, in terms of solar or wind, or even geothermal for that matter in Indonesia, in terms of hydro for that matter. But at the same time, for countries like Malaysia where we have oil and gas, it's a natural endowment that we have, and it's onus on us to fully maximize that value of the hydrocarbon. But the hydrocarbon cannot be just simply be put into production. It has got to be done in a manner that we also achieve net zero carbon. In the sense that we have got to do it in a manner that we reduce emission to the lowest that we can. In that sense, I think when you talk about CCS, when we talk about it quite a bit, CCS is one tool that it doesn't work unless we have government support, unless we have clear government policy on CCS. The industry can come together. I mean, we spoke about collaboration, and then I believe, for example, like in Malaysia, we can be the hub of CCS, and to some degree, I think the whole of Southeast Asia, actually, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Brunei, for that matter, and we do have a number of sites that we can actually develop as potential CO2 storage, and that can also be utilized not only for our own economies, but for also the Far East, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and for that matter, China. You can only do this through collaboration. My boss always like to joke with me because they say I am Mr. MOU. Because for the last 1 year, I've been signing almost like 20 MOUs across the whole value chain of CCS.
Right.
I've signed with EMP players to develop storage sites. I've signed MOUs with consumers in Korea, like POSCO and all, because they are the biggest emitter of CO2, being a big steel maker, for example. I've signed with the Japanese, for example. They have got some technology they would like to offer. I've signed, even with companies in the UK who provide verification. And also, I think, but it all has got to come together. You need to have all the industry participants together, and we have got to look across the whole value chain, from capture, transportation to storage. Only then it can work. And coupled with that, we need to have the government support. Government support does not only from Malaysia, from the various parts of the Asia Pacific. We know, for example, in Korea and Japan, there's very strong support towards decarbonization, very strong support towards moving in terms of CCS. And through bilateral agreements, through G2G, that also will be very helpful to make something like CCS to work. It's very important to get the government to come in.
It's absolutely very important, Mr. MOU. I will give you my golden pen. It's very well deserved.
Rebecca, can I interrupt?
Please.
He has a key word, one key word, mechanisms.
Mechanism.
Yeah.
Tell me why, Monty. Why is that the magic
Well,
word?
we know that the technologies, appreciate that the technologies, CO2 come in, you convert it to liquid, with minus 26 degree, you transfer it to the press that you want to store, you put it in the store and everything. And it come back to the capital investment and what the mechanisms that we can actually turn into the project that we think that we don't actually lose money, because it have to be balanced. So ADIPEC came up with a mechanism that the government or the regulator has to think about. Whether it be a carbon tax, carbon offset, carbon credit, and it takes few years before the oil price come into a standard in terms of looking at the history. Before you have OPEC basket, before you have Brent and WTI and so on.
Yeah.
My dream is we like to see this carbon credit as a global agenda.
Yeah.
That you can see carbon credit everywhere, and that's how the mechanism will work.
Thank you. Yes, food for thought indeed. Dr. Oki, so many things to unpack. Let me come back to you on CCS, CCUS, so important to your government, your company strategy, but also speaking of state players, how does what your company is doing fall in step with government initiatives, not least, is it NZE 2060, for example?
Yes, thank you. This is interesting, Rebecca. So I'm continuing Mr. Montri and also Datuk Adi who mentioned about CCUS and regulation. So what are the enablers for this energy transition? Let's say CCUS, for instance, right? So there are 4 enablers in this energy transition. The first one is the investment. The second one was the technology that we agree on, and the third one is the infrastructure. So as we can see that the second and the third is basically another investment, right? And the fourth one is regulatory framework. So this is the regulation. So what kind of regulation which is expected is basically the regulation which will allow us to invest, not only on technology, but also on the infrastructure. So coming back to the CCUS in Indonesia, we have a lot of studies. Fortunately, we are hosting one of the largest CO2 storage in Asia Pacific. And just a few weeks ago, we succeeded to have one of the first CO2 injection for EOR in our region, in ASEAN. So that's very good news. So after this pilot, we expect that there will be interwell and finally there will be clusters injection for CO2. And what is expected is basically the incentive in which that we can have first the CO2 for improving the recovery. Because Indonesia currently we are still the net importer for crude. So we would like to have more initiative for CO2 EOR. So in US, for instance, and UAE, they have a success story about CO2 EOR. In US, some literature said that up to 300,000 barrels per day produced from CO2 injection. So this is something that we would like to learn and stimulate. In addition to that, of course, not only for depleted reservoir, in Indonesia we have also cell information in which that basically we can store more. 95% of the storage capacity is in the silent formation. Of course, we need additional study for that, in which that it will require capex. Then we can have the huge storage in the silent formation. Recently, from the desktop study, we found in one place up to 12 gigaton of CO2 storage. So basically, now we are stimulating the CCUS. We are lucky to have a lot of joint partnerships with Japan, for instance. One of the developed countries in Asia Pacific is Japan, in which that they are having the capital available for CCUS, and we have the joint credit mechanism. Yeah, I think we also heard mechanism, right. Joint credit mechanism together with Japan. And in addition to that, of course, integrated energy companies are also coming to us, just like to PETRONAS. Yeah. So we are now having a lot of studies for CCUS.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kim, let me come back to you. We keep talking about investment. Given the volatile times in which we're living, how do oil and gas companies best distribute their investment, putting it in the right place at the right time? Tell me your secret strategy.
Yeah, I mean, hearing from many of us is saying that, we are probably, most of us are technologists. We are getting into the CCUS, which is E&P guys are doing well. Coming back to the investment part from the government side, we need to have some type of incentives. For example, in US, have a tax incentives. The biggest one is the capital investment. Initially, let's get into the CCUS. For the CCS cases, we need huge infrastructures to build. And not many companies, although we are national companies, but not many companies can afford it, or there is a return on investment which is very, very far from here. So it is very difficult to invest for 10, 20 years later or return. So the government involvement is somehow the capital investment or setting the tone on the infrastructure investment. That will be the case. Let's get to the investment issues. We are all oil and gas companies, and we want to produce oil and gas the way we are. Whereas we want to reduce CO2 while we are production. I mean, we have improvement. During the production, we can also reduce the CO2 emissions. But that's not enough. Investment in one sense, we continue to invest oil and gas. Probably more gas than oil. The reason is, as somebody said, that the energy security is name of the game. We cannot, because of CO2, the energy security, economy, or energy poverty, whatever that is, that's the same meaning. In other words, we have to have economically viable solutions. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So, because of energy security, we need to continue to invest oil and gas. Probably most of us thinking about the more gas and oil. That is the given, and we can want to keep the production at the level we want to be. And that's not enough. And then we also have to look at it, what else we need to invest. And many of us already gave a solution that CCS for us, and CCU is difficult for us to do that, but CCS, why? Well, we looked at it, value chain analysis, which is for the oil companies, oil and gas companies. If you look at the value chain, the development, production, and oil from the ground, which is CCUS is conversely totally reverse the process, so which is very easy for us to getting into. And then, in the future, many of us said that future will be the electricity, electrifying it. But we are not electricity company. We are not electric company. We have to do what do we do best, and then what will those are, and the CCS is one of the key elements. So we need to keep investing, keep collaborating For example, like Korea, we have a limited space for the storage, whereas other countries may have a lot. This is the area we need to collaborate and share the storages. So CCS is one. And then followed by, once the CCS is done, blue ammonia, blue hydrogen will be the next. So we want to keep on investing on blue hydrogen, blue ammonia, so that until the green hydrogen, green ammonia makes sense or economically viable. So this, in other words, we want to keep, to summarize it, we want to keep our investing on oil and gas while reducing the CO2s. And also we want to do what we do best, which is CCS and ammonia hydrogen.
Thank you very much. Montre, you're smiling and nodding. In terms of PT, your company, what exactly would you say? Would you agree with everything Dr. Kim said in terms of investment priorities, but also infrastructure being key to all of this?
Yes, indeed. I think let's be realistic. You know, we all need energy to survive today. Energy is everything. It's not only the oil or petrol that you fill in a tank, and people talk about the electricity in megawatt and so on. They like to change the word from barrels to megawatt, in terms of looking at the energy as a whole. But it will take some time for the energy transition from what we're doing today, in terms of fossil fuel production, E&P, oil and gas, whatever the term you use. But today we know that realistically it's not balanced. To make it balanced, we need everyone to come together and say, look, while we are doing this energy security, we like to see it more affordable, and in terms of sustainability, we need to work together more. Whether it be technology, be new form of energy, mix of energy in the future, or even to transform into hydrogen or whatever. But, I share this with my friends in PETRONAS. PETRONAS used the word that in the industry, E&P industry, oil and gas industry, is a long runway. In PTTVP, we use the word sunset. We like the sun, sunrise and sunset. We said this is going to be a long sunset. And towards the long sunset, take every components, into the equation. We try to secure, we try to make use of infrastructure, we try to see the energy become something affordable, and then we can move on into the sustainable energy. But again, if everyone in this room go out and say that we need to work collaboratively, think about what can we put into the mechanisms of the carbon credit to incentivize the industry for investment, that would help. Thank you.
Along sunset, along investment runway, and if the analogies are beautiful, but talk to me about the nuts and bolts. Do you concur? Do you agree with everything that you've heard so far? And bringing it back to infrastructure as well being pivotal.
Of course, I think it's quite important when it comes to investment. I think Montre did say that. I mean, to get into CCS, the investment is going to be quite massive. Actually. At the moment, I think we can probably focus on the technology part. We can probably do the engineering part. But at some point, I think the real challenge is when we try to put some of this project into commerciality. And that is where when investment decisions are going to be made. And I think that's where I think we have got to have all the support that we can get. We need to have the support from the government, like I mentioned, with all the incentives and the clear policy. We need to have, in terms of the bilateral agreement, for example, in Asia, for example, if you were to put together a storage site for CCS and you want to import CO2 from, for example, Korea, there must be a G2G agreement that allows cross-border transportation of CO2. That needs government support too. And then we also will need the financial support. And then I believe today is well accepted. CCS is one of the solutions to climate change. It is, again, I can emphasize, the only net negative solution to my knowledge at the moment. Of course, you have trees. You can plant a lot of trees. But you won't put that in the scale that CCS can offer actually over in the long run. So you need the government support. You need the financial institution support. You need to industry participants to come together to design the right commercial terms and arrangement to make it work. And at the end of the day, we will need to do in a form that we not only cover our costs, but we also need to make a certain return on some of these projects. And I think at the end of the day, that's where the investment will come. And I think there will be enough efforts among all participants across the whole value chain to make this happen. We don't have the solution at the moment yet. I think we are still plodding along in terms of the technology and the technical and the engineering aspect. But at some point, I think that when everything comes together, then only we can make that investment decision. And investment will be huge in any of the CCS project. Typically government, we talk about $30 per ton of CO2, right? If you simply want to inject 5 million tons per annum, that could easily cost you about 2 billion US investment for a storage site. So it's massive actually. And if you have multiple sites, it's going to be a lot of investment. And for a company like PETRONAS, we are committed already. We have resigned to the fact that we're going to allocate 20% of our capex for clean energy and also for decarbonization.
Right.
And that's the kind of commitment we have got to make this happen towards our journey towards net zero.
Colossal investment indeed, but for no worthier cause, of course, as we know. Dr. Oki, let me come to you. In terms of sustainability, fully integrating that into your business model, easy or not so much? Talk to me about the challenges there.
Yeah, this is interesting, Rebecca. So when we talk about sustainability, in addition to the capital that we expect to have, like Dr. Adi mentioned about CCUS, indeed it's basically intensive, capital incentive project, right? So it's also important for us to choose the strategy based on the indigenous resources. Like in Indonesia, we are lucky, we are blessed with hosting one of the largest biodiversity on Earth, together with Brazil, with the Amazon forest, for instance. So what we found in Indonesia, the natural-based solution is basically 15 to 20% of the world natural-based solution is in Indonesia. So this is something that we can promote in addition to CCUS. And we also found that by choosing the right trees, for instance, the leaves can capture CO2 while the seed can produce the vegetable oils. Some number of trees like Pongamia pinnata and then Calopium inupilum. So basically vegetable oils. They are non-edible basically, but they can be transported to our green refinery. At this moment we have 3,000 barrel per day green refinery, and later we expect that it will grow to 300,000 barrel per day green refinery, which can be better benefiting from the natural-based solution. So the leaves will capture CO2 while the seed will produce vegetable oils. At this moment in Indonesia, we are hosting the largest biodiesel, basically 7 to 8 million kiloliter per year. And we are expecting that the hydrogenated vegetable oil also will have a position in our energy mixture. In addition to that, we are also building the second generation ethanol plant. So if we just lead the biomass waste, it will release the methane. But if you convert lignocellulose to bioethanol, then the bioethanol can be blended with gasoline. It will reduce scope 3 basically from the product. We have success story in Brazil, for instance, in which that they have E27, 27% of the ethanol. Even in Sao Paulo, they have E100. So these are proper strategy by considering the indigenous resources is very important when we are talking about the investment in order to reach net zero.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, the sands of time are running away, so I shall come to you for some closing statements now, some key takeaways. Dr. Kim, if we were to meet at ADIPEC 12 months from now, in a year's time, how do you think the conversation will have moved on?
I think we could make a lot of progress. One thing, to take away is energy transition takes time. It doesn't happen, next day, kind of. So we have to have a longer term on it. One other thing is, in Asia, if you look at our, pros and cons, we have lots of mix. So we can collaborate a lot. And, I'd like to suggest that under the CEOs, we get together, we have an Asian, CCS task force, something like that. And then I would like to see that task force meeting 12 months from now.
Fantastic idea. Consider it done. Montri, will you be part of this Asian task force? We sign you up?
Yes.
You
Instead
heard
of
it
having
here
a
first,
Okay, you're
everyone.
bonded.
yeah, instead of having a CEO forum talk about the other things, we should have a forum talk about this as well.
We're going to hold you to this, gentlemen. Your key takeaway, please, Montri.
I think everyone is saying the same thing. You know that we are producing the energy as much as we can. You know, so more energy that we need for the world, for people to live on. Energy is everything. It's not only for transportation, as I said. But this energy cannot stay in the status quo. You know, the way that we work together, we need to think about how we can work together, and we have to voice it more. I think this panel is great, that, you know, that we can actually talk about. What I like to see as my key takeaway is just every time we get together, put the bottlenecks on paper. Say, what are the bottlenecks that we would like to see a cleaner world? You know, cleaner society, and less carbon society, whatever the words. But the bottlenecks, I think we all know, but we need to work together and come to one thing is that you can actually push it forward.
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you agree, Adu?
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly, yeah.
And you, of course, will be part of this task force. I'm including myself. C-suite
Will be
as
a
I
pleasure.
am. It's great to be back at ADIPEC in force. What's been your takeaway from the conference and exhibition so far? What's been an interesting conversation or two that you might have had?
Well, I mean, being in ADIPEC this year compared to I was here last year, there's a lot more energy, it's a lot more vibrant. And most interestingly today, I see there's a lot more commitment to drive the agenda when it comes to net zero carbon emission towards emission reduction. I think it also bodes quite well that right after ADIPEC will be COP27.
Right.
And I think the agenda of what we have here in ADIPEC and COP will be more intertwined. There will be a lot more realism in terms of the debate, I hope, in terms of the topics that they discuss. There will be a lot more practical solutions that we can actually talk about. And I was told COP27, I think there will be discussion more on implementation and execution rather than making any more pledges. And this is where the industry can come in a very big way. I think we have all the ingredients in this industry, oil and gas. We have the people, we have the technology, we have the skills, we have got the competency, and we have got the financial means to take on this sort of a endeavor that will make this a better world towards tackling climate change issues. And I'm quite hopeful in that sense, and I think this year's ADIPEC has positioned that agenda very well.
Yes, we very much hope so. Thank you. Very well said, exactly. Round of applause if you wish. To that end, Dr. Oki, we're moving away from obviously raising awareness to implementation to action, an energized force that we feel at ADIPEC this year. What surprised you most about the conversations that you've had on the ground or the general buzz?
Yes, this is interesting, Rebecca. So basically, concerning the net zero aim that we have together, we know that the planet that we are living today is not just for us, but for the future generations. So indeed, at the same time, we need to have energy security, and in addition to that, of course, we need to have the sustainability in mind. And this energy transition is not singular, but basically plural. So energy transition with S. So we can consider CCUS there. We can also consider the methane capture that we heard today also. We can also consider the bioenergy, utilizing the waste, solid waste. We are building a project now on biomethane, in which that we convert the liquid waste in order to get the biogas, and we capture the methane. And there are many other initiatives, including the green refinery. So basically, with that spirit, Dr. Adif mentioned already about COP27. And after COP27, we are in Indonesia, we are hosting in Bali G20, and Pertamina is leading Business 20 for energy transition, energy, sustainability, and climate. So welcome to Bali for everyone for energy transition.
You heard it here first again. Free tickets to Bali, everyone. We're going to hold you to it. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I wish we had more time to speak, but do take full advantage of the networking sessions throughout the day to meet with my esteemed guests. Please join me in thanking me for their contribution to our panel. Thank you. Thank you again very much, gentlemen. And don't go anywhere. Stay in your seats because you won't want to miss the next panel discussion which is coming up. In fact, it's a leadership interview, and it is focused on the industrial and manufacturing sector of the UAE capital, Abu Dhabi, where it's come from, where it is today, and where it's going. So we hope you enjoy that. Thank you again.